What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Body Lock. I'm Matthew Wells, Ant Walker alongside me that way. And we got another little nice topic to talk about right now when it comes to the former light heavyweight kingpin of the UFC, that one Jon Jones, and his beef, or seemingly no longer a beef, with Israel Adesanya. Stipe is now on his radar, rather. Jon Jones did an interview with one Tom Taylor from BJ Penn, saying that he has his eyes on Stipe Miocic now for his legacy, and that he's no longer interested in one Stylebender. What is your immediate reaction to hearing these comments from one Jon Jones, Mr. Ant Walker?
While I think that sounds like a bunch of crap, I think he's still very much interested in the Adesanya fight. I think they still have a lot to settle with one another. I do think he's onto something there. A fight against Stipe Miocic, I think, means a lot more to his legacy than a fight with Israel Adesanya at this point. Maybe that's not the case in a couple of years. Adesanya, I know we both are very high on and have been on this very same YouTube channel saying that we think he will eventually become the greatest middleweight champion the UFC has seen. So it means something then. But right now, he's a guy with two defenses. Stipe Miocic is the most successful UFC heavyweight champion in history. A win over him is light years beyond anything else that Jones can do for his legacy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's more so a thing for his legacy in terms of Jon has gotten a lot of blowback in the past for beating former middleweights. So maybe that's part of his thinking now. It's like, oh, if I fight Izzy, people are just going to say, hey, you beat another middleweight. Congratulations, Jon Jones. Where on the flip side, everyone has been calling for him to move to heavyweight for years. So, yeah, I think it would make a lot more sense to go out there and get a dub over the arguable GOAT of the heavyweight division for legacy's sake. To your point, though, I think at some point down the road, we could very well see, that Izzy versus Jon Jones matchup, especially if Izzy goes out there and takes a belt off of one Jan Blachowicz in the very near future. That will add a lot of intrigue to the potential super fight there. Of course, Jon would have to adjust his body back down to the 205 frame. But how much do you think that will come into play? Does Izzy need to hold that belt at 205 to get Jon to even think about it again?
I think so. It wouldn't, especially now that he's making this move up to 205. It'd be one thing if he just reigned over middleweight and then decided, okay, I want to fight Jon Jones at 205, like seemed to be the original idea. Okay, then we're talking about something. But if Israel Adesanya goes up to 205, is unsuccessful against Jan Blachowicz, I think we can just take that fight off the table. Because at that point, Jones has literally no reason to look back. He has no reason to go in the rearview mirror. He's essentially cleaned out the light heavyweight division, despite the fact that now there are some emerging contenders, but on the greener pastures and presumably bigger paychecks at heavyweight. So the likes of Stipe Miocic, the Francis Ngannou fight, a lot of people have been talking about. No, Francis has been very vocal about wanting that fight in particular. There's Curtis Blades out there. There's Derek Lewis. There's so many names that just sound like interesting matchups with Jones that heavyweight would be the way to go. And also, too, he talked about his level of motivation at 205. For all of the criticism he got for his last couple of defenses against Thiago Santos and against Dominic Reyes, there seemed to be a different version of Jon Jones, somebody that was less fierce. Now, it was my opinion, especially for the Santos fight, that he was holding back or putting unnecessary limits on himself just to give himself an extra challenge. Like just bored and said, hey, you know what? I want to kick an elbow only in this fight just to see what happens. If you're doing things like that and you're still successful, yeah, you're probably going to get really bored at 205. We've seen Jones, who notoriously did not train in between fight camps for years, Now seems to be so dedicated to his training. He's in there doing beast level strength and conditioning and trying to beef up those chicken legs and really add muscle and frame on. Why go backwards from that for someone who lost their shot at 205 pounds worth of gold? I think it only makes sense if Israel Adesanya is victorious at UFC 259. Other than that, this conversation means nothing, and Jones, in fact, will just look at heavyweight as the only place for his true challenges.
Fantastic point. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Click that bell for your notifications, so every time we drop a video, it'll send it straight to your phone, to your tablet, to your device, and you can click on it and watch our beautiful faces talk about the latest and greatest. One thing is very interesting to your point that you just mentioned a second ago about Jon not taking fights seriously. It says something when Jon was out there partying it up, not taking things seriously, like you said, not hardly training. That's one of those fights made it into the UFC Hall of Fame. Jon Jones's laziness made a fight go into the Hall of Fame. Whereas when they ran it back, and I'm talking about the Gustafsson fight, when they ran it back, we obviously see what could have happened in the first fight, I think, if he took it more seriously. So yeah, Jon's laziness caused a fight to make it to the Hall of Fame. Just funny to think about. Now, from the Izzy side of things, Izzy did say the comment a while back that he didn't want to be the Canelo to his Mayweather when it comes to Jon Jones. Basically, Izzy saying that he's not quite ready yet, which has always kind of perplexed me a little bit because Izzy came in with a whole lot of experience from the kickboxing world. He's a much better striker than Jon Jones. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. I never really understood where that came from him. I think I always took it as he needed more time to do what he wanted to do at 185 and then try to figure out the best way to put on more mass to compete against Jon Jones. Skill-wise, I never really bought into that argument or that defense from Izzy. Did you?
Yes and no. I think Adesanya skill-wise is right up there, and can compete with Jones. Overall, the thing is though, coming from the kickboxing world, what's his grappling chops look like? And I think at the time that they first started discussing this, I don't think we had seen a whole lot of Adesanya on the ground. And that time has allowed him to train and build up experience, face more wrestlers, and probably now he has a more confidence in that realm against Jones. Because I think also too, you have to think with Jones being the bigger person, it's going to magnify whatever advantages he has on the ground from a skill standpoint. So if you're already a strong wrestler and you're bigger than the guy you're facing, well, it just kind of makes you a doubly strong wrestler. So I think that's probably what Adesanya was alluding to. But also too, Jones carries an aura about him where even if you come from championship level fights and skill or whatnot in another related discipline, it's still Jon Jones in mixed martial arts. It's still the greatest talent the sport has ever seen. So there's going to be naturally is going to be a little aura about him. Then on top of that, I think Adesanya is just a little more honest and open about certain things than most fighters are. As much bravado as Adesanya has, he also has a lot of honesty about him. He's also pretty much an open book and it seems to be very genuine with a lot of the things he says. So that sounds like just a candid moment, just like, hey, I'm probably not ready for that right now. I want it, and I see a world where I can emerge victorious, but right now at this exact moment, I want to close a few gaps first. And that's something that I think a lot of fighters would not say, for fearing that, like now, it will be used against them as a perceived moment of weakness. Just my 2 cents.
No, it's a fantastic point. Fantastic point. I think back to other super fights that we never really got. GSP and Anderson Silva. That was always one that I never really wanted to see anyways, because I just thought that Anderson Silva was significantly larger than George St. Pierre, and I just never really wanted to see one of the two lose that fight. I kind of had that same feeling here with Jon Jones and Izzy. It's like I really don't need to see that fight. I mean, I guess if it happens, cool, but I don't. I would personally rather see Izzy clean out 185. I want to see him chase Anderson Silva's record. That's what I want to see. Jon Jones, I want to see Jon Jones move up to heavyweight. I want to see him take out the Francis Ngannous. I want to see him take on the Stipes. Let's see how that plays out. And then maybe if something happens in the future where they can come together after those two things are accomplished or those two things are met for my own selfish, wants, then sure, go ahead and do it. But I don't need to see that matchup personally. I mean, if it happens, cool. It's not like I'm not going to watch it, but I was never really waving that flag being like, yeah, I got to see this matchup, man. Where was this on your radar of anticipation?
Very low. I'm with you on that, because as great as a fight as it probably would be if you paired them up, that would be a fun one to try to handicap. I'll encourage everyone to go back and watch. It was a video that Luke Thomas put out on his YouTube channel that was analyzing Jones's latter half of his championship run and comparing it against what he might be facing against Israel Adesanya. And it was a very well done video, great technical breakdowns in that one. Especially after watching, I mean, I thought so before, but especially after watching that one from a technique standpoint, it sounds like a great fight. But it's also something that we really don't need, at least right now. And quite frankly, probably not ever. It's not like Jones is a fresh 23-year-old, emerging on the scene. This is a guy who is 33. He's had his fair share of injuries and mileage put on his body due to extracurricular activities or whatever the case may be. And, he probably doesn't have much longer in the sport. Granted, at heavyweight, he can extend his life considering how old a guy can be at heavyweight and still be a top ranked guy. But at the same time, Adesanya is a smaller person. It's just that simple. He's a smaller person. And if he grew into a 205-pound frame, and Jones could meet him at 220 or something, fine, we'll do it. But by the time that fight makes sense, probably won't be the best thing in the world. It will probably be more akin to when people were calling for Anderson Silva and Jones to fight, and the later stages of Anderson Silva's championship run and just at the beginning of Jones's. It might look something like that, which would have been cool if it happened, but I didn't need then, and I don't really need this now.
Yeah. I'm curious what the people think that are watching this. Let us know below. Is this a fight that you really wanted to see in the first place? Are you okay with it not happening? And just what do you think about Jon Jones's comments in general? Saying that he's done with it and he wants the Stipe thing. He wants to chase that legacy. He wants to chase greatness at a higher weight class. Like I said, that is where my interest lies. I want to see that happen. And I believe Ant is in agreement with me as well. So once again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Anything else you have to say on Jon Jones or Izzy or Stipe even?
Sign me up for Jones at heavyweight. Jones versus Stipe sounds great. I do say let's get Stipe Francis 2 out the way first, because Francis has been waiting too long. We've gone way too long without seeing Ngannou fight. So we need that. Jones can fight the winner of that, and I'll be a happy man. And also that gives Jones more time to acclimate his body to heavyweight. I want this to be a real transition to heavyweight, and not just you ate a couple of cheeseburgers and you didn't jump in the sauna. Now you're fighting at heavyweight. No, I want to see real, muscle bulked up, prepared, fully heavyweight Jon Jones, and see what he does against anybody from 206 to 265. Sign me up.
Yeah, that's going to be my last question for you here is, the full transition, like you mentioned. And I'm in agreement with you. Run back Ngannou and Stipe first. In the meantime, Jon Jones, should he take a fight at heavyweight, and who against?
I I don't think he needs to take a fight, but I would like to see it. Typically, I want to see a fighter take a fight in the weight class before getting a title shot. Jones would be the one person who doesn't need to, who doesn't, whose resume at the lower weight class gives him just a free pass to do whatever he wants. If Jones wants to fight for the flyweight title, okay, I'll see him in there with with one leg and half an arm. Um, all right, sign me up for that. Jones has that level of resume, so he can do whatever he wants. But I want to see as much Jones at heavyweight as possible. So if we're going to throw him in there for a fight before, give me Overeem. Give me Alistair Overeem.
I like it. I like it. That's not necessarily like one of the most explosive heavyweights. I was thinking somewhere along that range as well. I mean, I like a Derek Lewis type of fight too. I like a Volkov type of fight too. Those are just good names to kind of test the waters, and that's not to throw disrespect to any of those names being a tester fight, quote unquote, for Jon Jones at the weight class. But those are top 5 names in the division. And like I said, if we're going to get a fight, before the title fight, it's got to be somebody top 5. So those just happen to be the names there. Curtis Blades, I mean, is also there to round out the top 5 outside of Stipe and Francis. So anyone in the top 5, I'm cool with. Let's just see. Let's see Stipe and Ngannou 2 first before we put Jon Jones in a title fight. And whatever happens from there, I'm with it.